Hey folks, Colin here from Sumthins Recording, and today I'm going to show you how to get more top end out of your bass guitar. We're going to be chasing top end on bass today, but before we dive in, if you are ready to go a little bit deeper into the mixing process as a whole, and you really want to start honing your workflow as an engineer, then I have just the thing for you. It is my 7-step mixing checklist. It's a simple PDF that will walk you through the entire mixing process, step by step, to help you get professional and radio-ready mixes without the hassle and without any more of the guesswork. It is a completely free guide, and you can download it below using the link in the video description. Now let's jump in here and take a look at this bass guitar. Let me play you how our mix is sounding so far. This isn't a finished mix. We are up to the rhythm guitars. Here is what I just added in, but I wanted to stop and show you the bass tone that we have so far and how we're getting the top end that we really want from it. I'm going to play you what we have so far, so drums, bass, and rhythm guitars, and then I'll solo up the bass so you can hear what the bass sounds like by itself as well. Here is the mix so far. What we're going to be doing here is a combination of two things that I've showed you prior, but separately. So we are adding them both together now to get more top end from our bass guitar. First thing we're doing here is I'm going to take off all the processing on the bass. Let me show you the raw bass sound as it started. So this is just the DI and the amplifier with my usual frequency separation trick. So our bass DI is our low end and our bass amp is our top end. This is just our bass, no processing, no distortion. Here's what it sounds like to begin with. You can hear it's a good full meaning the low end. It's a good full low end sound coming from our bass guitar, but not a lot of top end coming from it. There's pretty much no top end coming from our bass guitar. It's a little dull and a little flat sounding. We have nice full low end, but we don't have any top end to help discern the notes or help it cut through and sit in a mix with the rhythm guitars and with the drums. It's not going to be competitive. It'll just be kind of this big low sound sitting in the mix. First thing we're going to do here is add a distortion track. This is something I've showed before, but now it's going to be in combination with a couple other boosts. So all I've done is duplicated the amp track, so this is just the top end on the bass guitar. So we have our EQ rolling off our low end, and then we're running into the red light distortion plugin. So it's on the second stage here, hard tube, and we're driving it up to 7.7. And then our output's all the way down, so it's balanced. Let me play you with and without the distortion. You can hear this kind of messed up sound here. Just pushing it enough to get some nice solid top end. That distortion is going to help us hear the notes, but you're not going to hear the distortion or the drive on this bass. You'll hear it in isolation. If we solo the bass, you'll hear the distortion, you'll hear the gain we're adding, the drive that we're pushing. But you throw it in with the drums, you throw it in with the rhythm guitars, and all of these other elements are going to absorb that drive, and all it's going to do is help you discern the top end or the notes that the bass player is playing in combination with our low end. That's the first thing we're adding. Let me A/B just that with our DI and our amp. So you can hear some of that grit, right, from the red light distortion, but it's not too crazy, even in with the DI and the amp. It pretty much just helps it feel like it was recorded through a bass amp, right? So we have our DI, we have our amp signal, and the distortion helps to exemplify or exaggerate the tones we would get from an actual amplifier and bring our top end more forward, so we have an entirely full bass sound instead of just being full in the low end, being big in the low end, and then kind of flat and empty up top. That's our first step here, adding in our bass distortion track. Next, we throw in our processing on our bass bus. So we talked about these two boosts probably in the video that came out last week. We got a boost here in the mid-range at 700 hertz, and then we've got a boost up top at 4K, helping to bring the top end, that fret noise out, and the finger noise sliding along the fretboard. So let me play you the bass again, and I will A-B our bass bus processing. So you're going to hear these two boosts here go in and out. We've got this one here at 700, that's giving it a little bit more aggression, so a little bit more mid-range bite. And then we've got up top here at 4K, we're doing 7 dB boost at 4K. That's going to help you hear the finger noise, hear the fret noise, and that's going to give us our more top end. Let me start with just the EQ before I throw the rest of the processing in. It's really like taking a blanket off our bass amp, right? It goes from sounding a little bit dull to a little bit more alive. You can hear the distortion a little bit more, and we get a little bit of noise. That's okay. Noise sounds like the ocean, right? Reminds you of the ocean. But a little bit of top end there helps to wake up our bass sound. We hear the distortion a little bit more, but again, that'll get absorbed by the rest of the mix. Let me throw the compressor in and our other EQ boosting our low end here at the end. You can hear our finished bass sound. You'll hear that distortion. It might sound a little messy in isolation, a little bit too crazy on the top end, but we'll throw it back in the mix and you'll hear how it sounds with the drums and the guitars. They'll absorb some of that distortion sound and you'll be left with the nice top end. So here's our finished bass sound. Just getting some more top end on it. Some of that fret noise, some of that finger noise helps you discern the notes. Make sure you know what the bass player is playing, and it will help it cut through the mix better. So it's not just a low end sound. You want it to sit with your guitars, with your bass, or not with your bass, with your drums and with your vocals. You want it to sit inside the mix, not just on the bottom end of the mix. You want it to have a strong low end. You also want some top end noise so you can hear it better and pick it out in the mix, especially if you're listening on smaller speakers or headphones. You're not going to get that huge low end that you'd get from an awesome monitoring system. So you need some top end to discern it in the mix. Throwing it back into the full mix here, well, not the full mix, what we have so far, so guitars and drums. I'll pull out the distortion track as well as those two boosts. Take a listen. Small moment here. Notice that when I pulled those out, there's a space that's left by that. So there is a frequency spot for this section of the bass. So for some top end on bass, there's room for that in the mix. It doesn't need to sit all the way at the bottom by itself. There's room inside the mix, sitting right with those guitars in the mid-range for some top end on the bass. So now we're going to do the opposite. We're going to add those boosts back and the distortion back on our bass here. These two pieces here really help us to get some top end on our bass, to help it cut through the mix and help it blend with our guitars and sit better with our drums. So it's not just low end that we align with our kick drum, it's top end that we sit with our rhythm guitars, with our snare drum, with our overheads as well. So building an instrumental to support our vocals means having some top end on your bass. You want to hear every player in the band because they all have something to contribute. They all have their special sauce that they're adding into the song. Quick review here, starting by adding a distortion track for our bass. So we're just duplicating our amp, which is just our top end on our bass, and then we're pushing it into a distortion here to exemplify or exaggerate that top end so we can pull it up underneath and get some of that nice amp sound, some of that tube top end, fret noise, finger noise, what have you. Then, taking that a step further with a little boost here in the mid-range, about 700 hertz, and then a big boost here at 4K, 7 dB at 4K, to bring that out even further as we push it into the compressor. All that goes together to give us more top end on our bass, to sit it with our guitars and our drums inside the mix. I hope that was helpful for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you're ready to go a little bit further into the mixing process and take your mixes to the next level, then I have just the tool for you, and it is completely free. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and you can download it below to start creating more professional mixes in less time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.